Given that, Congressman Kelly, we want you to speak with Steve Hayes. He is a senior writer with the Weekly Standard. And Syria, Steve Hayes, please explain to me America's vested interest in giving military aid to the rebels in Syria.
Well, morning, guys.
Morning.
I think we have our vested interest. Our first interest is not allowing the chemical weapons that are in Syria to fall into the wrong hands. And unfortunately, now Syria is populated by many people with lots of guns who we would consider to be the wrong hands. So that I think is the main concern, the main problem with what's going on in Syria.
But do we even know who the right hands and wrong hands are at this point? How can we be sure that American military aid is not going to go to aid people who have pledged allegiance to al-Qaeda?
Well, you can't be sure, and I think it's much more difficult to know who the good guys and bad guys are today as opposed to 18 months ago. I think this is one of those cases where at the very beginning of this fighting, there were lots of arguments against any kind of an intervention on the grounds that we didn't have any basis to intervene and that this wasn't really our business. But I think this is one of those cases where a limited and early intervention on behalf of the good guys, when we knew who they were, when we had an opportunity to strengthen their hand, could have saved what will, I think, now be a much costlier and uglier and more difficult intervention later. Really, in my view, the only thing that we can't do at this point is do nothing, because the prospect of having either a Syrian regime that's emboldened to use chemical weapons and or sell them to bad guys, Iran-linked Hezbollah, others, or to have them fall into the hands of al-Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood, and others, is just an unacceptable outcome, would be very, very dangerous.
Hey, Steve, this is Mike. I think one of the criticisms of this administration has been this leading from behind policy that we have. And having had the opportunity to go to that part of the world about a little bit over a year ago, the question in every country that we went to came down to when we met with these folks was, when are you folks going to take the lead? And when are you going to step forward? When are you going to make statements or actions that actually show the rest of the world the direction that we need to go in? And we're with you, but we need to have you in a lead position. We don't need to have you in a backup position. And I think what it's done, I think it's weakened us around the world. I don't think that we mean what we used to mean to these folks. They used to look to us and say, you know what, we like the states. We like the fact that they like to take the lead. And, quite frankly, you have to be a little bit cocky. You have to have some self-insurance or you can't really lead. And when you say, no, you guys kind of figure it out and we'll be there for you if you need us, that's not really good when you go into these heavy skirmishes. And I think right now there's a lot of confusion as to what exactly this administration means when they say lead from behind.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think that's one of the fundamental problems, challenges we're facing right now. I think it's one of the challenges facing the president at the G8 today is, now he's talking about arming the rebels, quote unquote, the rebels, hopefully arming the good guys. But as we say, it's become much more difficult to distinguish good from bad. But if you go back and you look at this, not just the administration's rhetoric on Syria and on other things, it's that it contradicts arguments they've made at other points. I mean, go back and remember the big speech that the president made. It was in March of 2011, if I recall correctly, on the intervention in Libya, explaining the intervention in Libya. And there was a lot of florid rhetoric from the president about how this was the United States obligation. The United States is a different kind of country. We can't just stand aside as the world's superpower and watch the kind of slaughter that we were seeing in Libya take place, and made what I thought was actually a pretty strong moral case. I mean, even if there were reasons to hesitate, a pretty strong moral case for preventing further atrocities, for helping to try to shape the outcome in Libya, even if we couldn't determine the outcome in Libya. And the problem was the president didn't follow that up with action. He then basically, as you said, Congressman, led from behind. I mean, the Libya intervention was where leading from behind actually came from. And now I think in the context of Syria, people look back at what happened in Libya and think, you made this huge, strong moral case when you were talking about the prospect of 6,000-7,000 people dying. Here we are, nearly 100,000 people dead in the United States hasn't acted. I mean, where is that sort of moral urgency that you used in arguing on behalf of Libya?
Steve Hayes is our guest. He's a senior writer with the Weekly Standard. And, Steve, you did such great reporting in the early days of the Iraq War, detailing connections between al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein. And I wonder if you could talk about the chemical weapons in Syria. And I hear people here in town talking off the record about their speculation that these chemical weapons that Syria has could very well have come across the border from Iraq during the buildup to the Iraq War, because Saddam was hiding his chemical weapons, and he hid them over in Syria with his Ba'athist brother over there in Syria. Hey, do you hear that as well, that potentially the Assad chemical weapons are actually inherited from Iraq?
Sure, I've heard people talking about that, and it's possible that I think some small number of chemical weapons may have migrated over during the early days of the Iraq War, even before the Iraq War. But we know also that Bashar Assad has had his own chemical weapons stockpiles, that he's had his own CW program in Syria for quite a while, and the concern, I mean, my main concern at this point is that if those fall into the wrong hands, and virtually everybody, as I say over there now, is the wrong hands, we will be facing the kinds of dangers that we haven't been facing yet, or at least haven't known that we've been facing yet, where we have, serious al-Qaeda-linked terrorists or others intent on harming the United States who are in possession of these most deadly weapons.
Hey, real fast, Steve Hayes, we only got 30 seconds, but what do you know about this new president of Iran? It seems like everybody in the media jumped out and said, oh, he's a moderate. Is there such a thing?
Well, he's a moderate compared to the other 5 radicals who were up for election, hand-chosen by the supreme leader. Look, I'm not excited about this. I don't think it offers us much hope, and I'm a little concerned that the president and others who are investing their hope are going to be settling for sort of a false sense of security. The mullahs still make the decisions.
Well, hey, Steve, let me just, again, this is a very small neighborhood that we're talking about. I think sometimes when we don't see it as Americans because we're not right there, again, going back to my time in those countries, and they said the same thing. Listen, it's a small neighborhood. When somebody has a weapon that we don't have, it puts us in great danger. And we look at our friend Israel, and we look at how they're surrounded. I think the American people, take a good look at that part. Go to a world map and take a look, and you're going to get a sense of just how that area works and about bad neighbors and what you have to do when you live in that type of a neighborhood. You got to be able to fight for yourself, and you got to think that my big friend, the United States, said they'd be here for me if I needed them. Where are they? And I need to have them step forward now and not just talk, but bring the stick too. Yeah.
We're going to have to leave it at there. Steve Hayes, you can follow him on Twitter, by the way, Stephen F. Hayes. That's spelled Stephen with a P-H. You get the ritzy P-H there instead of the V, Steve Hayes. That's impressive.
It's my dad's name, too.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Steve Hayes from the Weekly